Hello everybody, so this is an update of my plasma switch with a lot of changes, updates for this testing phase in terms of equipment, in terms of configuration, and I have a couple of things I would like to show you. I use for this experiment also my spectrum analyzer because I see very unusual behavior here in the energy flow, and I want to analyze that, where that might come from. What you can read here on the side at the moment is between 12.6, that's a very interesting frequency. Between 12.6 and 22.5 is a fairly high value of energy available. I have also made an adaptation, I will go through later on. I will not use my bipolar tester coil anymore. I will explain a little bit about this fantastic inverter course here from Panasonic. We'll go a little bit later to that state. I use just my normal amplifier stage as I had before, nothing has changed. We power system as well, and I use some couple of other things I will go later on into with details. Here you see two generations from the microwave oven transformer inverter type from Panasonic, high efficient system. On this side that's the so-called C-core, that's the first generation I was working with, based on recommendation, and that is a new generation here, that's the E-core. I used for my system also the C-core, and I can tell you that it doesn't perform at all. So the performance in terms of plasma generation and so on is very low. Whereas here with this E-core, and I don't need to do modification as recommended, I just use a primary here and go to the secondary, and on the output side, it is absolutely fantastic, which I will show you in a second. Here at 50 kilohertz you can see the plasma is very strong, and also it breaks out under the same frequency range over on spectrum analyzer. Let me just toggle it from on to off that you see it on the spectrum analyzer. The core is currently not in a Faraday cage, but I have everything prepared. So every system here for my tests will be built for in the future with inside a Faraday cage, which will be very special, but shielded. And I can tell you that I have shielding materials ordered which are military grade and used actually from the defense systems and other institutions around the globe for the systems. There are two types of shieldings you have to bear in mind. One shielding is magnetic fields, which are based on mu metal, very expensive material. And then you have other materials which are only effective against radio frequency up to higher gigahertz range. So when you build a Faraday cage, you have to account for both frequency ranges. That means also Earth's magnetic fields can be shielded. So that makes the system quite complex because you have to apply 3 layers of various materials and also nested to make sure that nothing happens. So I'm going to build that. I'm going to get that material, so that will take some time. But what you see on the spectrum analyzer on the side is, let me switch it off. So that is an ambient range at the moment. It was said to be something about a frequency range which goes around the globe. So it's monitored all around the globe at the same frequency. There is no movement here on that frequency range. If I switch on, so it's at the same range going up. So the frequency here I'm using is 50 kilohertz. But that has an impact on that frequency range here between 22.5 megahertz. So that's quite interesting. So the plasma is very strong. I can go briefly through the frequency ranges to give you an idea about how that behaves. Go up a little bit, so the current goes down. So I'm at the moment at 88 kilohertz. I'm at 124 kilohertz at the moment. I'm at 170, 180 kilohertz at the moment. I'm at 200 kilohertz at the moment. I'm at 226, 250, 60. I have resonance now on a scope visible at 300. So this plasma, you can see the plasma form changes. I have very high values now on magnetic radiation coming in, because I have a current probe here on a floor setting and it's picking up quite a lot of current. You can see that on the spectrum analyzer as well, that the radiation is much greater now at 377 kilohertz, going further up. So the plasma goes lower and lower in the intensity of light emission. I'm at 420 kilohertz at the moment, 450 now. I'm at 500 now. So that's 500 kilohertz. At the moment I use 20 volt only as input. On the driver side I'm quite high with 130 milliamp already, and I'm still on the same value, so it's very linear. The power consumption of this inverter, I'm still at my 500 milliamp, I'm still at my 10 watt. I had also at 50 kilohertz. So that's good news at some point. However, that needs to be optimized, because we want, as I said in the first part, we want as little as possible energy to put in to initiate the plasma field, and actually to influence then the power flow through the plasma field. For my next test I use an upper coil which have been provided by Flash Guru 1970 for me, and what I can tell so far is that it is from a winding point of view similar to what I have received from ancient technique before. So that is also a bifilar coil. So one of my premises, so when I started a couple of years ago thinking about the concept, what I want to do with plasma and so on, I was exactly my idea. Wanted to use a plasma tube and wanted to influence the plasma field in a so-called feedback fashion through this rolling coil or upper coil, and influence the plasma field, that the energy through the field, through the vortex, is synchronized to the load. That means that when we try to organize the best frequency to have an energy flow which is enhanced through the system, that we save ourselves a lot of time doing that. So I have done that here with this coil, so that I will show that coil goes on top of the tube. I feed power through that tube, which comes partially from my inverter coil here, but is open and has to go through the plasma, through the coil. And you will see it has quite an impact. I use also a new fluorescent bulb. I used a couple of new bulbs and I tested a couple of systems, because you might remember the first time I saw a lot of power fluctuation during my experiment with the asynchronous asymmetrical and symmetrical coil, and I was thinking it's because there was something wrong with the tube and I couldn't explain it differently, but you will see it later. The complete system is fluctuating quite dramatically, and I hope I can replicate something which I have done before today, which is remarkable, and I would like you to be the judge of it. So that is now the construction. So this core goes through, or the plasma tube goes through the core. The core is connected to the circuit from one side here. This one side goes in, goes through the coil. The bifilar is closed, so it goes out of the coil, goes in one side in on this side, goes through here and goes on the other side only through the plasma out here. So there is no direct link. So the connection has to go to the system. In order for the full bulb to illuminate, it has to be harmonized through the plasma. Synchronized, whatever you want to call it. So let's have a look how the plasma field is reacting now to the coil. You might be able to see that now. So the plasma is very strongly inside compressed through the coil. See if you can see that from here. It has also very strong variation. At the moment I'm at 91 kilohertz. Let's see if I can change that a little. So I go down on the frequency. Let me hold it for years this way. Goes further down. I'm at 80 kilohertz. $70. 60. 56. Let me be around 50, because that's a very strong value. Now let's see if I can kick that in. I increase the power through the plasma. Glow comes on one side. Now we have a very small glow now on one side. Let me see what we can do with it. Here we go. Very bright. So that is at the moment at 30 volt and at 700 milliamp. So that's 30 watt bulb. So it latches up quite a lot current as well. I measure the current at the moment is at around at 260 milliamp, and let's have a look here. Yeah, quite nice. So the voltage on both sides is quite similar. So what you see now is kind of flashing going on here, and that's very peculiar. So let's see if I can get that up to the system where I had it before, and then something very strange happens. So we'll try to organize that way. You will see the flashing, but I had a very specific combination. So this is an irregular flashing. Let me go to a different pattern, 50 kilohertz, because I had something very regular coming, and see if I can replicate that. Let's have a look. Now it's coming. But I should see that you see very strong flashing. It's around 50-60 kilohertz range. Now you see that that's a pulsating here going on. I don't see any change on the scope. No, on the scope I see a lot of change, sorry. I don't see any change on the spectrum analyzer. It's still the same level, but it's pulsating on the scope quite a lot. There's no change in the current from input side. So it's fluctuating in the plasma and it's fluctuating. So it's pulsating through here, and it's pulsating actually twice the brightness. Intermitting, always kind of like it is a, I would say that is influenced by another harmonic, but I cannot see anything on the spectrum analyzer indicating something like that. It is completely static at the moment. So that's quite regular, and what I notice is the longer I keep it at that level, the more the frequency increases as well. Very peculiar. I'm at the moment at 35-40 watt. So if I increase the power, it still pulsates, but it stays stable. I'm at 45 watt at the moment. Now it's still fluctuating. Now a little bit more. So higher is the frequency now. Let me go down in the voltage and power. 40 volt. Smaller fluctuation, as you can see. Let's say it's a smaller change as I go down to 30 volt. That's 30 volt. It's 18 watt at the moment. It fluctuates slightly. It's not so good visible anymore. Let me zoom in a bit. It looks stable in the camera, on a monitor. So it has slight fluctuations. Okay. Let's go back to 40 volt. Here we go. That's about 50 kilohertz. Let me go back to 44. Because 44 kilohertz, interesting, is a very specific frequency, also in the acoustic range, in hypersonic. Oh, here very strong, 44, exactly as it was mentioned that in acoustic 44 kilohertz has a very specific value, very strong flashes now. Now you should see that nicely. So I measured that today and during the day, and I thought maybe that has something to do with the different time zones, and that is a new fluorescent bulb. So there is nothing wrong with it. It was never used before. It has a normal power rating of 30 watt. I used it specific because it requires much more power to illuminate on purpose, so that it is not so bright that you can see differences, but it's still quite a lot. I would need to increase the brightness here in order to change that a bit, but it's quite good. I think it's quite good visible to see.